The dilemma is how to control the massive problem of invasive species without poisoning the planet in the process. The Himalayan blackberry is one of the worst and most ubiquitous species that we have in the Northwest. Chemical eradication is expensive and it's dangerous. So what's a rancher with 500 acres of blackberries to do? Well, eat them, of course. Jill Heimensen traveled to Eugene to explain what I mean by that.
Had a goat named Billy, wasn't he a sight? He jumped right in the bushes and eat with all his might. He ate up all the garbage, north and east and south, chewed up all the briars, but he never scratched his mouth.
Hello, today we're here with Mia Nelson from Lookout Point Ranch. How you doing today, Mia?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks.
All right, well today we're going to take a look at some of your goats that you have here on the farm. Tell us a little bit about your goats.
We got our goats primarily for vegetation management. We have a lot of blackberries here, and we didn't get goats so much because we wanted goats. We got goats because they were the best way for us to deal with our blackberry problem. The blackberries are sort of the ideal invasive species because they have a method of taking over new ground. They send out runners, canes that touch the ground, and they take root there. So they can take over undisturbed ground, like they could take over a grass pasture, no problem. And that's what they were doing here. They were slowly, just every year, the bushes kept getting bigger, 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 and we were faced with the whole thing turning to blackberries eventually. We had areas where there was 80, 90 acres, just solid blackberries from one end to the other. And they were over our heads, in a lot of places, and they have no real diseases that wipe them out here, so they just go crazy. Goats really like blackberries. Goats are browsers like deer, and so if they have their choice, they would rather eat plants like blackberries and poison oak and Scots broom. They would rather eat that than grass. And believe it or not, they actually like many kinds of weeds more than they like grass too. They really like thistles. There's a couple invasive weeds like star thistle that they love, and there's no other kind of livestock that will selectively target weeds. And as soon as these leaves comes out, the goats will just snip those off and weaken the plant farther, and it'll eventually die. Since they prefer these plants, after a number of years, they actually eradicate them. For us, our terrain is so steep, and there's so many rocks, and there's just no practical way to mow it at all. So we were looking at having to spray chemicals on 500 acres, and we didn't want to do that. So for us, it was either get goats or spray. So there was really no choice. But they're much cheaper than mechanical control on terrain like this. You could go out with weed whackers. But with hundreds of acres to do, it's out of the question cost-wise. But for goats, you can throw up a fence for 20 cents a foot and throw them in there, and they'll do the same thing, and they'll do it for free. The blackberries will come back no matter how you mow them off with a goat or a weed whacker. But the nice thing about the goats is they'll weed whack 24/7, out there for you. Walk up, Pandy. I have a border collie to move them around, but you don't need one of those if you feed your goats, because you can train them, Walk up, Panda. To come to you.
Good girl.
Mine run from me. Since I have cougar and predator problems like dogs, coyotes, eagles, I have livestock guardian dogs, and they're usually Great Pyrenees or Akbash breed, and not everyone needs those. It's only if you're going to have a predator problem. You need good fences, and that's about it. Well, I don't have to feed the goats even in the winter, because there's enough for goats to eat in Western Oregon year-round. They eat blackberries and even grass in the winter. I could probably support one goat for every 2 acres long-term on my land, but you can sometimes support way more goats in the beginning because there's so much food for them to eat. We have a 500-acre farm, and we run goats on all of that. And we have a few hundred goats right now, and we're building up. We probably wind up with 300 mother goats and their offspring here year-round. These are all Kikos. That's a New Zealand breed, which has a climate a lot like ours. And I picked them because they are adapted to being outside in the rain on poor quality feed with pretty much no management inputs. And I've found that in order to be profitable with this, you need to get goats and manage them in a way that you're not putting any money or time into them any more than you absolutely have to. I don't have barns, I don't feed, and I try not to do anything else to them. And we don't assist them with having their kids. We do check their hooves once or twice a year, but I rarely trim any hooves. And I do give vaccinations every year. And other than that, I weigh them a lot because I am trying to breed better goats, but I don't fuss with them at all. Because once you start doing that, you're not going to be profitable anymore. It's a more viable option than you might have thought, and it can be cheaper in the long run to do this than to go out and buy a mower and to battle it that way. You can actually get into goats. If you've got 5 acres for less than $1,000, you can fence it all and get some goats and be in business. And you could not buy, a mower for that much. So that's the main thing I like people to realize is that don't rule it out as an option. And before you go and get your spray, your herbicide, there are other ways.
How do you make your money with your goats?
3 ways really. I sell all my culls, the ones that aren't quality breeding stock. I sell them for meat, and it's a good market. It's about $1 to $1.20 a pound for live goats, and then I sell the good ones for breeding stock, and I expect to probably gross about $30,000 or $40,000 a year doing that. So it's a good business. And I also sell wethers. Those are the castrated males. I sell those to people for brush control. And they're quite inexpensive. I sell those for $90 a piece. And then the third way that I make money, really, I more save money. I save a lot of money on vegetation management costs, which, as I said, was the main reason I got into goats. These goats do for me, for free, chores that I would have to pay thousands to do with chemicals or machinery.
Could you contract them out to the cities? I mean, could the city come to you and say?
I plan to get into that later when I have more goats and when I have my own problems under control here. I just can't spare any of my workers yet. I have too many blackberries myself. We did get approached by the Army Corps of Engineers about using our goats to graze off their dam embankment, and I've heard that the Eugene Water and Electric Board used goats recently to graze the canal that brings the drinking water because it's a non-chemical alternative, and they must have decided that it's cheaper than paying people to weed whack it all. But yeah, long term I plan to get into renting out my goats.
All right, well, thank you, Mia, for having us to your farm today.
Thanks for coming, Jill.
I love seeing the goats and the dogs and everything. And I'm Jill Heimensen, bringing you the tools to be sustainable today.
Nothing yet.